2 years ago, I left behind the noise of the city for a quiet village with my husband Leo. We were both tired of fast lives, crowded streets, and endless distractions. The moment we arrived at the little house near the edge of the forest, something inside me exhaled. Here, birds sang instead of traffic, and the fresh smell of trees replaced the city's smog. We had plans, big ones. We wanted to start a family, live simply, and build a future filled with peace and love. At first, everything felt like a dream. Mornings were slow and beautiful. I'd make breakfast while Leah worked in the garden. We'd go on walks near the river, hand in hand, dreaming out loud. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. I felt like we were creating something real. Not long after we settled in, we met the neighbors, Ben and Chloe. They were close to our age, friendly and warm. Ben was often away for work, sometimes gone for weeks at a time, so Chloe was usually on her own. She would wave from across the fence and stop by to say hello. At first, it was comforting. It felt good to know we weren't alone in this new place. We shared dinners, picked berries together, even spent weekends hiking. It was nice. It was easy. But like most stories that take unexpected turns, this one began with something small. Chloe started asking for little favors, help with her garden, lifting a box, fixing a dripping faucet. Leo, being the kind man he is, always said yes. "She's just lonely," he told me once. When I looked at him with a raised eyebrow, I nodded. I wanted to trust that. I wanted to believe in the goodness of people, in the innocence of it all. But soon those small things turned into regular visits. Every few days, Chloe needed something else. Leo would spend hours at her house, telling me, "She just needs help, that's all." I smiled, but I could feel something shift. It wasn't just time he was giving, it was attention. And Chloe? She had changed too. No longer in casual clothes or messy hair, she'd greet Leo wearing dresses, her hair done, her makeup perfect. It didn't feel like a coincidence. I watched the way she looked at him, the way she laughed too long at his jokes, touched his arm just a little too often. Still, I said nothing. I buried the discomfort deep inside, told myself I was imagining things. But silence can be heavy, especially when it's filled with doubt. One evening, Leo was late coming home. The sun had dipped below the hills, and I stood by the window watching the road. My hands trembled slightly as I texted him, "Are you okay?" No reply. When he finally came through the door, he smiled and said, "Just helping Chloe with her car." I didn't question him. Not then, but that night I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, the silence between us louder than words. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror and asked myself a hard question. Was I being jealous? Or was something real happening? My gut said I wasn't wrong. I decided it was time to stop pretending everything was fine. Something was changing, and I needed to face it before it changed too much. That's where everything started, not with a fight, not with proof, but with a feeling. And sometimes that's all you need to know something is breaking. The next few days felt heavier than usual. Leo continued helping Chloe with small chores, but now I couldn't stop myself from noticing every little detail. His phone buzzing more often, his smiles after reading a message, his sudden habit of stepping outside to take a call. Each small thing added weight to the doubt already pressing down on my chest. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I wanted to believe in my husband, the man who once held my hand when I cried over small things, the man who whispered dreams of fatherhood under the stars. So instead of accusing, I watched quietly, waiting for clarity. Then something happened that made the silence louder. I saw them together one afternoon, Leo and Chloe, in her front yard. She was laughing at something he said, her hand brushing against his arm too naturally. They stood closer than friends should, and when Leo noticed me watching from across the fence, his smile faded just a little. That flicker of guilt told me more than any words could. That night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. As we sat at the dinner table, plates barely touched, I finally said it. Leo, I began softly, why are you spending so much time with Chloe? He looked up, fork frozen mid-air. What do you mean? She just needs help, especially with Ben gone so often. She always needs help. And it's always you, I said, my voice cracking, but still steady. He frowned. You think something's going on. I don't know what I think, I whispered. But I know how I feel. I feel invisible. I feel like she's getting more of your time than I am. He sighed and leaned back. You're overthinking. Chloe is just lonely. So am I said. The words came out quicker than I meant, sharper too. Leo's eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the man I married. I didn't know you felt that way, he said quietly. Because you stopped asking, I replied, barely above a whisper. We didn't talk much after that. He promised to put some distance between himself and Chloe, said he didn't want to make me feel second. I wanted to believe him, and for a while, it seemed like he meant it. He started spending more time at home. He helped me plant flowers in the garden again, just like when we first moved in. We even went on a walk together, talking about the future, about kids, about building a treehouse someday. I started to hope. But Chloe wasn't done. A few days later, she came to our door holding a plate of homemade cake. Her eyes scanned the living room behind me as she asked, Is Leo home? I smiled politely, my stomach tightening. He's out running errands. She nodded slowly, then offered the plate. I made this for both of you. Just wanted to say thanks for everything. I took it, forcing a polite smile, but something in her tone didn't sit right. Thanks, Chloe, I said. But maybe it's time you try handling things without Leo. She raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. Just being neighborly. I'm sure you are, I said, closing the door gently but firmly. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding, cake in hand, unsure what to do next. Part of me wanted to throw it in the trash. Another part wanted to pretend none of this was happening. But a stronger part, the part that had quietly endured, was finally waking up, and it was ready to protect what mattered. Even if it meant facing the truth I didn't want to see. The silence between Leo and me grew heavier after that evening, though he tried to be more present, helping with breakfast, joining me for quiet walks. The weight of unspoken tension still lingered in the air. We were smiling, but it wasn't the same. We were close, but I could feel the distance. I didn't bring up Chloe again, and neither did he, but her shadow lingered. One afternoon, while Leo was out at the hardware store, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the untouched plate of cake Chloe had brought. I hadn't thrown it away, not out of politeness, but because something about it felt like a quiet reminder, a quiet warning. I picked up my phone and opened a conversation with my best friend, Maya. We hadn't spoken in weeks. I typed, paused, deleted. Then finally, I sent, Can I talk to you about something? Within seconds, my phone rang. Of course. What's wrong? As soon as I heard her voice, the tears came. It's Chloe. I think she has feelings for Leo. I told Maya everything. Chloe's behavior, Leo's long visits, the tension at home, the cake. Maya listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a beat. You're not crazy, she finally said. Your instincts are speaking, and even if nothing's happened, the way she's acting isn't innocent. I don't want to be the jealous wife, I whispered. You're not, Maya replied firmly. You're the wife who sees someone circling her marriage. Her words gave me the strength I hadn't felt in weeks. That evening, Leo came home with groceries, smiling as he set them on the counter. I got your favorite tea, he said, trying to be sweet. I nodded, thank you, but I didn't smile back. Later, as we sat on the couch, I finally asked, Do you think Chloe likes you? He froze, the question catching him off guard. What? No, I mean, she's friendly, maybe a little too friendly, but I don't think. Leo, I said, turning to face him. She's not just being friendly, and deep down you know it." He stared at the floor. I didn't want to believe it, but maybe you're right. The honesty stung, but it was the truth I needed to hear. "I need to know something," I said, my voice trembling. "Did anything happen between you two?" He looked me in the eyes. "No, I swear. I never touched her. I never planned anything. But I didn't stop her either. I liked the attention. I liked feeling needed." A lump formed in my throat. "And what about me, Leo? Did you forget I need you too?" He leaned closer, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Anna. I got carried away. I never wanted to hurt you." I believed him, but I also knew we couldn't go back to pretending everything was fine. "I want us to be okay," I whispered, "but it has to start with honesty, with trust, and with boundaries." He nodded. "I'll talk to her. I'll make it clear that she can't come between us." That night, Leo sat beside me on the porch as the stars began to peek through the twilight sky. He didn't hold my hand. We didn't say much, but there was a quiet understanding between us, a fragile beginning to rebuilding something that had started to crack. And in that stillness, I realized something important. Love isn't just about feelings. It's about choosing each other, even when the world offers tempting distractions. Leo had drifted, yes, but now he was trying to find his way back, and maybe, just maybe, I was ready to meet him halfway. The next morning felt different. Leo woke up early and made breakfast. He didn't say much, but his actions were gentle. He made my coffee just the way I liked it, 2 spoons of sugar, not too hot. As I watched him move around the kitchen, I saw something I hadn't seen in a while: effort. After we finished eating, he cleared his throat. "I'm going to talk to Chloe today." I paused, my hands still wrapped around the warm mug. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" "I have to be," he replied. "If we're going to move forward, I need to fix what I let happen." Later that afternoon, Leo left to visit Chloe. I sat by the window, watching the clouds drift across the sky. Every second he was gone felt like an hour. I wasn't afraid he would hurt me. I was afraid of how I'd feel if he didn't say what needed to be said. When he returned, he walked in quietly, took off his jacket, and sat beside me. "She didn't deny it," he said softly. "She said she liked being around me. Said it made her feel less alone when John was gone." I nodded slowly, my chest tight. I told her it wasn't appropriate, that I should have set boundaries earlier, that I'm committed to you, and I asked her to give us space. "What did she say?" I asked. "She cried," he said, eyes heavy. "Said she wasn't trying to ruin anything, but she agreed to step back." A quiet relief washed over me, not because I wanted to see her hurt, but because the conversation was finally out in the open. No more secrets, no more pretending. The following days were quiet, but a peaceful kind of quiet. Leo and I spent more time together, not forced, not scheduled, but naturally. He came home early from work. We cooked meals side by side. We walked to the river again, like we used to when we first moved to the village. But healing isn't instant. One evening, as we sat outside under the stars, Leo took my hand. "I want you to know something," he said, his voice low. "I never stopped loving you. I just forgot how to show it." I looked at him, tears forming in my eyes. "And I never stopped hoping you'd find your way back to me." We sat in silence for a moment, then he pulled me into his arms. That night, I slept without waking up from dreams that left my heart racing. It was the first time in a long while I felt safe again. The next weekend, we saw Chloe and John at the market. She nodded at me, politely but distantly. There was no smugness in her eyes this time, just distance. She understood now, and I was grateful for that. John was back in the village for good, and with his return, Chloe's attention shifted. Whatever she had been seeking in Leo, she no longer seemed to want. That afternoon, as Leo and I walked home with bags of vegetables and bread, he smiled at me. "Do you still think about it?" he asked gently. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not with fear anymore. just with understanding. He squeezed my hand. I'm glad you didn't give up on me. I smiled softly. I almost did, but I think love is sometimes about staying, even when it hurts, as long as both people are willing to heal. And we were. We were healing, slowly, deeply, and together. Months passed, and life in the village returned to its gentle rhythm. The air felt lighter. The garden, once neglected, now bloomed with bright flowers Leo had planted. Every time I looked outside, I saw traces of his quiet efforts, small but steady reminders that he was trying. Our conversations grew deeper. We no longer tiptoed around the past. We faced it, gently, together. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and bathed our home in golden light, Leo handed me a small box. I looked at him surprised. "What's this?" "Just something simple," he said, smiling nervously. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm shaped like a tree. "For strength," he whispered, "because we bent, but didn't break." I couldn't hold back the tears, not because of the gift, but because of what it meant. He saw my strength. He honored it, and finally he was standing beside me again, not ahead of me, not behind, but with me. Chloe and John eventually moved to a nearby town. We heard they were trying to rebuild their own relationship. I no longer felt anger toward her, only a quiet kind of distance, like looking at an old photo. It had happened. It mattered. But it no longer had power over me. Leo and I started talking about having a child. At first, it felt like a dream we'd tucked away in a drawer, but now it felt like something real, something we were ready for, not to fix us, but to grow with us. One morning, as I stood by the kitchen window holding a warm mug of tea, Leo came up behind me and wrapped his arms around me. "I like us like this," he said softly. I leaned into him. "Me too." We weren't perfect. Some days I still questioned things. Some days I needed space, and he understood that. Trust, once cracked, doesn't seal overnight, but it was healing, brick by brick, day by day. One Sunday, we invited our friends from the village over for dinner. Laughter filled the house as we shared stories and memories. And as I looked around the table, I realized something powerful. I wasn't living in the shadow of that painful time anymore. I was standing in the light of what came after. Later that night, Leo and I sat outside again, wrapped in a blanket beneath the stars. "Do you ever think we wouldn't have made it?" he asked. I thought for a moment. Yes, I did. He nodded. Me too, but I'm grateful we didn't give up. I took a deep breath and looked up at the stars. Love doesn't always look like fairy tales. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's silent, but when it's real, it stays. Even when it struggles. He kissed the top of my head. "You stayed." "We both did," I said. And that was the truth. This wasn't a story about betrayal or jealousy. It was a story about fighting for love, not loudly, not dramatically, but with quiet strength, with soft choices, and with honesty. Lisa had once threatened what we had, but it was never really about her. It was about us, about how we chose to face temptation, silence, pain, and fear. And we chose each other. In the end, I didn't lose my husband. I found him again, and in the process, I found myself too.